Hello guys, it's Jonathan Hart here doing a Beyblade discussion, this time on CX, and asking whether or not it has improved from the start. So CX is a line that I really didn't like very much upon its reveal. A lot of that was concerned with how it would develop over time, specifically into a fourth line and beyond. So in this video we can't really get into that, but we can talk about how it developed as a line, which is still part of my concern. I talked about this in my first impressions video as well, quite a few months ago at this point, but it has certainly been a very strange line to watch. That said, I do think it was somewhat of a necessary line. Maybe we didn't have to go into full customization quite yet in Beyblade X, but I do think a third line, at the time it was made, was necessary, and I think they could have divided things in a different way. I think they could have restricted the customization a little bit more to make some parts a bit more like 40, where they're self-contained, but they are still multiple parts technically in one. But they opted for full customization, which I guess makes some sense, but it's just not really ideal for me personally, but that's what they did. So each bay has 3 distinct parts. You have a lock chip, a main blade, and an assist blade. So first up, we'll talk about lock chips. Lock chips are definitely going to be the quickest part of this video because there's just not really a whole lot for me to say about them. They kind of just exist, honestly. They're just these small parts. They're largely cosmetic. They don't do much, they're just kind of like these stickers that you could put onto your bay. They're the same, who really cares? With an asterisk, because there are 2 ships that people actually do care about, one of which is Valkyrie, which I don't have yet. I'll have that later in the month, but not yet. But the one I do have is Emperor. So Emperor is, of course, a metal lock chip. So it has a bit of extra weight. That's cool. People like when things have more weight, so I guess it's a cool way to expand upon lock chips to make sure that not every single one is the exact same. Also with CX, you could argue that metal here is actually a bit more balanced because, of course, CX is very interesting, to say the least, about its weight distribution. This further concentrates the weight to be high up, which isn't always great, but it is still more weight, so it is a bit of a trade-off. So in that sense, I don't think this is necessarily just a strict upgrade, but it is something new for lock chips, and it's really the only way they could have added onto lock chips in an effective manner, I think, so they at least did a good job with that, I'd say. Now, main blades, I would say, are a bit more contentious with how they've developed over time. Personally, I'm not big on it, but in a lot of ways, main blades are very, very similar to BX blades. They're just static parts that don't really do a whole lot. They just have their own sort of shape to them, which works, but again, we're getting more interesting with UX, and I feel like now with CX, it's more so just BX, but with customization. I don't feel like there's a whole lot here with that. And unfortunately, so far, CX has just been that. I know we'll get more CX stuff in 2026 and likely beyond, but I think it's fair to at least make some kind of judgment. By the end of 2025, this line is nearly a year old at this point, and they haven't done a whole lot with these blades. You could argue that's part of the point, but for me personally, I would just say that it's kind of boring in that sense. Not enough is going out with these blades. We already had kind of basic blades. We're getting more interesting blades, and now we kind of go back on it. That said, UX does still exist, so it's not as big of a problem. Like, if CX completely took over, then I'd have a pretty major issue here, and this video would be much different in tone, but because UX still exists, I can't complain as much, but I think it would have been better to have more main blades actually do things. That said, though, there is still a bit of hope because there was actually one single main blade to do something. And that, of course, was Eclipse. Eclipse actually does have a gimmick to it. Now, it's not necessarily a moving part on a blade, which is fine, but instead it is, of course, a flippable blade. So you have kind of the different modes of, upper attack, down smash and whatnot. You have the different colors to kind of signify that, which, it works pretty well, I would say. But it is a way to change up the blade, and it does it pretty well, I think. I'd have no issues getting more things like this, where we have gimmicks that aren't necessarily moving parts or overly dynamic pieces or anything, but they just have things that they could do within the confines of the system that actually works well. In this case, yeah, it does, so more stuff like this would be great. We'll see if we get anything else like it, but for now, it's just Eclipse. None of the main blades we got in November, after Eclipse had already released, had any form of gimmick at all. So right now it's a one-off thing, but hopefully we get more of them over time. As of right now, though, main blades I think are still fairly underwhelming. I guess because we've gotten one interesting part. It has technically improved based on an average of every part, but it's still just one outlier. So for me, main blades aren't really all that great yet. Now assist blades are a bit of a different story, so for assist blades, these are just kind of these weird plastic pieces that act as supplementary contact points to the main blade. It's very awkward because these are plastic. I feel like they aren't as impactful as they maybe could have been, but they work, I guess. For a while, the only genuinely interesting assist blade we had was turn. Of course, having the ability to change modes. This outer piece here can flip over. You have different, upper attack, down smash modes, whatever. It worked. It was at least something, but it was, again, the only part like it. Kind of like how Eclipse is the only main blade to have any sort of special idea behind it. And that's what turn was for quite a few months. However, we eventually got duel. Duel is very similar to turn. It really has like the same kind of mechanics of, like the upper attack and, like down smash stuff. So it has a similar idea, just in a different shape. So it is sort of a reused idea, but at the same time, I'll take it. It's something different. Fine enough, honestly. However, in November, we got 2 new assist blades that actually did something. These being free and heavy. So these two actually have a bit more going on. Heavy is probably the less interesting of the two. It just has a couple metal parts on the bottom here, which adds a bit of weight. And the placement of the metal is particularly notable because it is towards the bottom, which is actually kind of helpful for CX. So if it was just metal, I'd be a lot less impressed, but I think that the weight distribution issue actually makes this a lot better than it otherwise would have been. I think free is definitely the more notable assist blade here, and so far the most interesting assist blade in general, as well, it can free spin. This outer part here has the ability to spin, which is honestly really, really cool. It makes me hope that we get more assist blades like this in the future, could have other moving parts, maybe incorporate metal on some of these moving parts, even if it's just smaller pieces of metal, doesn't matter. Could use rubber. There's a lot of things that these assist blades can do, and hopefully main blades can also get a bit better. But as of right now, I think assist blades have actually improved a fair amount. Not all of them are interesting, but technically, since September, every single assist blade that we've gotten has had something new. Those 3, of course, being dual, free, and heavy. Prior to that, the only other one worth noting is probably like wheel because it's round, but that's still just, plastic. It works though. It's fine. So hopefully assist blades do continue to have more interesting identities behind them because it definitely adds a new layer to CX, and so far I would say these have been a pretty big improvement. I like them well enough, so that's nice. That said, there is still a pretty massive issue with assist blades that likely just will not be fixed, and that is the fact that they're plastic. I'm still not really sure why Takatomi decided to have plastic contact points in a gen that has primarily metal contact points, and also in a gen that has bays going very, very fast flying at each other. It just seems like a horrible idea. I mean, the metal in this gen already has some durability problems, so assist blades aren't going to hold up the best. And unless they start coating some of the primary contact points of these assist blades in metal or something, that's probably just going to persist. It's one of those issues that's more so just an issue structurally with the line. I don't think there's much they could do about this, unfortunately, so with that, I'll just say they should have planned better, and that's really all I could say about it. So that part really hasn't been fixed. Speaking of problems that haven't been fixed and probably can't be fixed, we have height. Height is a really big problem in Beyblade X. I mean, these bays, they're just too tall. I feel like X has been too tall in general, but CX has just been a different level. I mean, Wheel here is the tallest of the bunch. I mean, this bay is just hilariously tall. It's on an 80 height as well. We have this adds like 5 extra millimeters to the height. Why? I mean, I guess you could argue in Wheel's case, it's okay, but that still feels like a lot of height to just add, but whatever, I guess. But every other assist blade still adds like 2 to 3 millimeters. You're making every single bay tall. And not only that, main blades aren't overly thick. A lot of them are fairly thin, actually. And with how tall they are, that just means that's a lot of metal concentrated high up, which means that the balance of these things is going to be pretty subpar. So unless you find a way to bring this metal down and also just make assist blades shorter, because even if assist blades added 0 height, main blades are still thin, so you still have a somewhat awkward concentration of metal. Yes, it would be better, but having better metal distribution that's not concentrated to one specific point would be much better. And again, that's why I mentioned like heavy having these 2 points here. It could potentially drag down the weight a little bit. Not saying it's a perfect solution, but it's something. But again, this is a massive structural problem with CX, and I don't think it's something that they can just fix. It's likely that this will never be fixed for CX, and it's just how the system is. Was this poor design? Maybe. Was this intentional? Also maybe, although I feel like that'd be really stupid if it was intentional. I know some people have argued that CX being the way it is means that it takes more skill, but it's not so good that the skill gap of being good with a CX bay makes you just beat every BX and UX bay. Like, Shark Scale is still just better than every CX bay out there. So if CX takes more skill to use, why would I not just go and run a UX bay that actually functions without a bunch of extra effort? That's assuming CX is actually better based on high skill in general, but if this was meant to be some kind of skill expression line or whatever, I don't really think it works that well. And yeah, the height of these bays has just not been fixed. It won't get fixed. This part has definitely not improved. Aside from that though, I guess you could argue that CX just has some extra limitations because the parts are smaller, you can't have as much going on. There's less room to work with, which is true, but that's true for any sort of divided line, whether it's divided wheels, metal plate, divided layers and burst, or divided blades here in X. But that's just to be expected, and I don't like that very much, but there's not much you can really do about it. It's just kind of how it is if you have less space on these bays. And again, they have done at least a few things, especially on assist blades, so that's at least something. So overall, has CX improved? Yes. Has it improved enough? I find that to be hard to say. I want to see more out of main blades in 2026. Hopefully do more with them, that'd be great. Hopefully assist blades keep this up, hopefully it's not just a short run of interesting assist blades and they go back to normal. That'd be unfortunate. But with what we have now and what we should hopefully be getting in the future, I think they've done at least a decent job at making CX quite a bit better than it was. There's definitely more parts that are worth using now. It's just a better line for sure. That first wave was pretty abysmal, for being honest. That said, however, I still just feel like the system structure of CX isn't really good. It's not something that you can just fix. So because of that, I'm still just going to be waiting on a fourth line to hopefully take the bulk of releases, and hopefully it doesn't have the same problems as CX, because even though it's improved, it has still kind of struggled. Opinions on CX are just all over the place. I remember there being a lot of hype early on. Everyone thought it was cool, and now it feels like some people absolutely despise it, some people think it's great and will defend it with their lives, a lot of people just in between somewhere. It's a weird line. It's been very divisive, I feel. So it'd be nice to just get a fourth line that actually just is good, and everyone could just agree that it's good. That'd be preferable, but anyway. So yeah, CX has improved, but unfortunately there are still a lot of problems with the line that really can't be fixed without major overhauls to the system. At that point, just make a new system. So if we can get more main blade stuff like Eclipse, if assist blades keep up, I think this is probably as good as CX is going to get. And to give them credit, they've definitely turned things around from that first wave, but again, the system is still just really awkward. So that's all to say about it. So anyways, thanks for watching, and bye-bye.